Chief Director from DTIC on the platform, Committee Secretary.
Yes, thanks, Chair, through you. I'm here, Chair. Thanks very much.
Okay. Then let us then hand over to the Gauteng Development Agency, Economic Development Agency, and the Gauteng Department of Economic Development.
Good morning, Chairperson, and good morning to all the other honorable members on the call, and also good morning to DTIC officials and all the colleagues from the Department of Economic Development. My name is Blake Mosley Fatula, the head of the department, and I would be leading the delegation, as has been explained earlier on. In our delegation, we do have representatives from GADZ, the OR Tambo SEZ, and also representatives from the Tshwane Automotive, the OR Special Economic Zone, and also representatives from the GGDA in the form of the acting group CEO, Mr. Saki Zampaka, and other departmental officials. So as per the request of the committee, we've prepared presentations to address the issues raised in the letter that we received from the committee. And those presentations are two presentations dealing with the OR Tambo SEZ and also dealing with SEZs. And we're covering all the issues that have been raised there. Suffice to indicate that both SEZs are fully operational and they are actually delivering value for money. They are actually working. They are assisting in growing the Gauteng economy. As normal, we would have operational challenges, but most of those operational challenges are actually, in hand. And Honorable Chairperson, what I would request would be for the first presentation to be done by the CEO of the OR Tambo, SEZ Ortia. That's Mrs. Tanding Ngobe, and then to be followed by the presentation done by Becca Zulu, who's the CEO of SEZs, and then after that we can then have discussions and deliberations. That is if you actually allow so, Chairperson, unless if it is that you want to change. But that's the introduction that I would make, and if I can actually hand over, with your permission, Honorable Chair, to Tandi to start with the presentation. Thank you very much.
That's in order. You may proceed with the presentation.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to Chair and members. I hope I've been given sharing rights. I will begin my presentation.
You've been given sharing rights. Okay, they're starting to show. Can you just go into slide mode?
Yes, Chair. I'm trying to do that. I hope it will allow me. Okay. Let me try again. It was not showing on my side. Thanks,
but it
Chair.
was showing on our side. Yeah.
Is it showing
Proceed.
now? Okay. Thanks, Chair.
Yes, it is.
As the HOD indicated, the presentation will go according to the questions that were posed by the committee. So in terms of the location of the OR Tambo SEZ, so the OR Tambo SEZ constitutes of 3 land pieces or 3 precincts. Precinct 1, right at the bottom of the page to your left-hand side, I think, measures 7.5 hectares and is partly operational, and construction is about to be completed on the remaining buildings. Precinct 2 measures 29 hectares, and there we have just completed the bulk designs, and we will be going to tender soon. And the Springs precinct, which measures 13.9 hectares, which is based in Springs, as the name indicates, is also about to, the bulk development should begin in the next financial year. There's a lot of work that is happening, and I'll talk to that. It's not moving on my side. Okay. Now, precinct 1, as I indicated, Chair, comprises of 10 buildings, including a dedicated security screening building. So it's the jewelry manufacturing precinct. As members can imagine, it is quite a high security precinct because that's where the diamond cutting, diamond and jewelry making from both diamond, gold, and a little bit of platinum happens. So it's quite a high security building. And we also have a parkade that can cater for up to 600 users. The 3 buildings are currently operational, and a further 6 buildings achieved practical completion from a construction perspective in July. And beneficial occupation is underway, where tenants are actually carrying out their tenant fit out, such that the buildings can be ready. We anticipate that the buildings will start being fully operational in October 2023, just looking at the plans of the various tenants. The building 5, or the 1 building, is still under construction. It measures 5.4 square meters, and it is due for completion in 2024. This is the last remaining building of the 10, and we only received funding for that building, I think, in March 2023. The building stands at about 50% construction completion as we speak. Precinct 2, as indicated, Chair, we have completed the EIA, the environmental impact assessment. Township establishment is underway, and we have completed detailed bulk designs and should be going for tender soon to appoint a contractor. We hope that by Q4 we will be doing site handover for the contractor to take side of that particular piece of land. For Springs, we also have completed bulk designs. It's a greenfield project as well, and we have not received funding for this project yet. And so we hope that we will go to market the beginning of financial year 24-25. What I'm omitted to indicate, Chair, is that precinct 1 is actually AXA land, Airports Company South Africa land. Precinct 2 is a land that we are occupying via notarial lease, and it's from province. It's a notarial lease between ourselves and the Gauteng Department of Infrastructure Development. Precinct 3 is a land which we are in the process of entering into a notarial lease with Impala Platinum. In terms of the current operational investors, we've got 2 investors. Into Food Company, it's in agro-processing, food processing. They put up a capital outlay of 257 million, or an investment of 257 million. The jobs created to date are 2,500. It's our biggest employer to date, Chair. The metal concentrators, which operates within the mineral beneficiation sector and is a gold refinery company, they put up 102 million, and they're employing 97 employees to date. Now, in terms of the new investors who are going to be joining us, who are currently carrying out tenant fit out, we have got about 10 investors, and they all are within the mineral beneficiation. As I indicated, Chair, that precinct 1 is the jewelry manufacturing precinct, and the total investment, I think, is around 470 million, and they will employ about 309 workers initially, or employees. In terms of the jobs sustained, Chair, for precinct 1, as I said, our biggest employer is Into Food, the agro-processing company, which had jobs created and sustained 2,500 jobs by the end of the 22-23 financial year. And the other jobs, 97 jobs, belong to metal concentrators, and the other smaller numbers to Malka Amit. Malka Amit and Brinks are 2 companies that operate within the sector, within the mineral beneficiation sector, and are logistics companies specialized in the movement of high-value goods, your jewelry, diamonds. And in terms of the jobs created during development of Precinct 1, we created 1,064 construction jobs during 22-23 financial year, and it adds up to a cumulative number of 1,108 since the development of Precinct 1 started. Chair, this is just a depiction of the milestone of the delivery of a food factory with the second largest refrigeration plant in the world, the Into Food factory, and it supplies all those goodies to Woolworths Food, or what we term Woolies Food. In terms of the work that's going on, and these pictures are now slightly dated, Chair and members, the buildings have been completed, all of them. I think to date we've completed about 7 buildings, or about 9, including the 2 entrances. And we've got 1 building, which I said will be completed by the end of March 2024. And we pride ourselves in the successful conceptualization and clustering of the mineral beneficiation industry in South Africa, in direct response to the mineral beneficiation strategy. And we believe that this will result in the enhanced export of mineral beneficiated products from South Africa. In terms of our management model, Chair, firstly, the OR Tambo SEZ is 100% owned, and the GIDZ, which is the Gauteng Industrial Development Zone, is the special purpose vehicle which was created to establish the OR Tambo SEZ. So the GIDZ is 100% owned by the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency. And because Gauteng Growth and Development Agency, or the GDA, is a 3C company, the subsidiary also takes the shape of a 3C company. The OR Tambo SEZ, or the GIDZ, has got its own board and its own executive management team. So, Chair, on this slide, all the blue boxes are of positions that have been filled. The red boxes denote new and vacant positions, and these are new positions that were created in the current financial year, in the 23-24 financial year. The old and vacant positions are the green boxes. These positions were created in the past financial year, but were not filled for various reasons. So, for example, under executive operations, those 2 facilities manager, Precinct 2 and Springs Precinct positions will only be filled once Precinct 2 and the Springs Precinct come into being. The senior program manager, we had somebody who left us recently. So we had a project manager in that green box who was also acting senior program manager, who has just left us. However, we have capacity from GGDA in that regard, because we've been working quite closely on the project itself. And then we've got that hospitality position, which we will be filling soon in the current financial year. And then the red boxes, we are just looking at our finances, Chair, in terms of being able to fund those positions in the year under review, in 23-24. In terms of coordination between national, provincial, and local government, we have quite a good relationship with City of Ekurhuleni. And I think, Chair, what has helped us is that the heads of the various divisions with which we work, or departments of the metro with which we work, have remained a bit stable in the past year to 18 months. So it has positively impacted our plans and just the project itself, to a point that the City of Ekurhuleni has committed to funding the development of a business case for the OR Tambo SEZ to be a standalone company. So we're working quite closely with them. We have also indicated to the city that they should also look into being part of the shareholding of the SEZ as a standalone company. It's discussions that are continuing to unfold and work that is unfolding. Nationally, we also participate in the CEO's forum of the SEZ, as championed by the DTIC, and we engage quite continuously with the DTIC on all issues that affect the SEZ. Provincially, we are represented at all SEZs and economic development engagements. In terms of challenges and opportunities in developing the SEZ, I think the issue of just infrastructure financing remains an issue. The prioritization of various projects from bulk development to top structure development remains an issue. I was actually saying to the other colleagues from the other SEZs that we continuously compete against each other for this money. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, Chair, but yeah, I think a little bit more work needs to be done in terms of prioritizing the various SEZs for funding purposes, just assessing where they are, what they can deliver at any particular point in time. And because we are not yet a standalone entity, as prescribed by the SEZ Act, the National Treasury has not recognized us in terms of Section 51G, and therefore our application for a bank account was rejected. However, as indicated, we are working on a decision at least has been taken in the department that the process to migrate the GIDZ from GDA is starting or has started. And as a result of that non-recognition, we have not been given approval to therefore offer incentives to our investors. And it obviously has a negative impact on investments, given that 100% of them are technically eligible for this incentive, given that they are doing a lot of exporting as well. In terms of opportunities, there's a lot of market interest, Chair and members, particularly when as buildings rise and people see that there's a hive of activity, people, a lot of investors start touching base with us, wanting to know if there's still space, etc. However, for Precinct 1, for the jewelry manufacturing precinct, we are over 90% subscribed. We believe that by the end of September, we will be 100% subscribed because we are talking to finalizing certain agreements with the last 2 investors. And because we are also located in close proximity to the R21 economic development mode, I suppose the interest also comes from there in terms of our location. There's also a scope for expansion. I've mentioned the 2 precincts that are coming up that could house technologies, emerging technologies and innovations such as fuel cells and electrolyzers central to the hydrogen economy. I must also mention, Chair, that for Springs, we have already secured 1 tenant or investor who is an IPP, independent power producer, who has already been accredited by the city of Ekurhuleni and is being funded by the PIC and has support of the NEF as well. So we're working quite closely in ensuring that we retain this tenant and we assist them, whichever way possible. In terms of our future plans, Chair, we have quite a good relationship with the Gauteng Infrastructure Finance Agency, what we call GIFA, and they're assisting us in funding the procurement to secure a specialist deal maker for those 2 precincts, for Precinct 2 and Springs, in terms of those identified sectors. And the procurement process, we anticipate that will be completed by the end of September, and we should be able to at least confirm some of the investors by the end of the current financial year. In terms of concessions that we offer to investor, Chair, in addition to those SEZ incentives which we spoke about earlier on, we have a lease management and rental reprieve policy that guides our negotiations with investors. And the policy makes provision for rental discounts granted for specific periods, for lease incentives in the form of either rent subsidies, relocation cost, or facility fit-out requirements. These lease incentives obviously must comply with whatever applicable legislative framework, including the National Treasury framework on operating leases. The reprieves, the rental reprieves for startup companies are offered under the following circumstances. Firstly, where the operations of the startup enterprise support the growth of a particular sector in the economy, or technical innovation enhancement and industrialization of the country and or province. 2, where there's a case for promotion of targeted economic activities, prioritized economic sectors and designated groups. Thirdly, where there's a business case demonstrating the ability for the sector and or investor tenant to improve the capacity for job creation, growth, general economic growth and exports. Lastly, the rental reprieve is also applied to SME startup companies in order to provide them with ramp-up support in their first years of operations. Thank you very much, Chair and members.
Thank you very much. Can we have the second presentation?
Becca, please proceed.
Thank you, HOD. Thank you, Chairperson. I'll load the presentation. Is the presentation visible?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay. Try this one more. Can I have the sharing rights? Because I'm just struggling to.
You are co-host, so you should have sharing rights.
Okay, okay. Thanks. Okay, let me try one more time. Is it visible now, Chair? Still?
No, we don't see it at all.
Oh.
Committee Secretary, can you assist, please?
We're trying to do so, Chair. I'll come back to you.
Yeah, I seem not to have the sharing. The sharing button is great here, so I'm trying to click on it.
Okay, I think the Committee Secretary must then just assist you to get sharing right.
Yeah, just give me a second. I'll make sure.
Okay, waiting.
Margaret will share the document. I'm having load shedding, so I'm having challenges. So Margaret will share now.
Okay, so Mr. Zulu?
Yes.
Yeah. If you can then allow the committee staff to flight your presentation.
Okay.
You can just, yeah, there it's loaded, being loaded.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Margot,
Okay.
can you just take it into slide mode? Okay, I see you busy.
Yeah.
Okay, you may proceed. You can just say next slide when you're ready. Proceed,
Okay.
Mr. Zulu.
Yeah, I'm just not sure whether it's the latest one, but I think I'll go with this one because I think we sent another version yesterday. But let me start with this one. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, colleagues, for opportunity to present. A presentation will be around the issues that have been requested by the Portfolio Committee, which is our current state of development, the current investors and job created, the investment pipeline, the model, and the coordination between national and provincial government, challenges and opportunities, and the focus areas, future plans, initiatives to expand the investor attraction and the concessions offered. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. From the current status of the SEZ, as you can see on the green areas, these are some of the areas that we doing well. We've mastered most of the aspects in the green, which talks to the land in place for phase 2. Although in the amber, we do highlight that we are actually requiring additional land for our phase 3 because of the investment pipeline that we have. And as you're going to see in the next slides, that we've quite a lot of interest that we've attracted of recently in the number of investors that want to be in our SEZs. And then the master plan and the business case done, 11 investors with over 4.7 billion secured so far, with over 11 investors secured for the phase 2. And the pipeline has almost 23 potential investors, which some of them include the black industrialist, as you're going to see in the latter slides. And phase 2 also has a SEZs campus and a mixed-use development, and that has been also outlined in the latter slides, and all other designations are in place. I think some of the aspect that we start currently dealing with is the issue of power, as we going to see later on that we have some limitations in terms of power, given that we have a maximum of 16 MVA from City and Eskom, and what we're hoping by in the next month, or maybe a latter part of next month, we could be having additional power through the interventions that are currently done between COT, Eskom, and DTIC to get additional power through the Eastern Fabric supply. And the bulk designs for phase 2 all in progress, and phase 1 construction has been commenced, and there's commencement in the phase 2. So again, all in all, the issue of alternatives energy solution is what we're looking at. And also proud to say that from SME support and spend, we have procured up to 1.2 billion for phase 1 and phase 1A, and the bulk of it has been SMMEs and township economy. So in terms of the Township Economy Development Act, we've made significant strides in that regard, as well as empowering some of the neighboring communities. Next slide, please. The next slide talks to our phase 1, and this also highlights some of the master plan and the future development plan. I did speak about the phase 2 plans, which I will elaborate later on, which talks to the development of the SEZs campus, which should have the incubation program that will assist the industry to grow. It will also address a lot of community needs, especially when we referring to issues of talent pipeline and SMME development, and some of the aspects that communities will need. And again, the academy will have a skills academy, which focuses on the artisan and the scarce and critical skills. I think as part of the latter slides that I will highlight in greater details in terms of our future plans. But again, this would also have one element that is required, which is the research and development. R&D is one of the key and critical aspects that we've incorporated in the future plans and the master plan to actually be able to harness new knowledge and develop us to be a knowledge economy contributor, and also be one of the world-class top contributors in terms of what you do. And again, phase 2 will look at the retail, the new industrial nodes, the truck staging, and some of the aspects that will also assist the growth of the economy. And then it talks to phase 3 development at the center, which we currently requiring or are trying to acquire land in that regards, the 31.5 hectares of land, which will also look at other aspects of development of the SEZs and going forward. Next slide, please. Okay, the current investment as depicted before in granular detail. This actually looks at the contribution that have made by different companies on my left-hand side, and it also depicts the business type that they're in, which talks to businesses that are in mud flaps, box rail, load bins, harnessing, mirror assemblies, sequencing of glass and exhaust, and plastic injection molding. And again, if you look at the center, it also depicts the country of origins, and also it highlights the partnerships that have been done in terms of these joint ventures, whether we're talking mergers and acquisitions or equity stakes that have been acquired, and it depicts also the collaboration that have done from international relation aspects when we look at some of the investors coming from the different countries, Portugal, Thailand, Germany, Denmark, and so forth. And if you look at my further right, it talks to the element of permanent jobs, and this element talks to number of jobs that we've created in our SEZs. That's why I think the slide has it's a slightly older slide. I've got a updated one. We currently have more than 3,100 jobs, permanent jobs that we've created in our SEZ, and also that talks to the 4.7 billion that have been injected, as opposed to the 4.3 that was anticipated. So we have surpassed or exceeded the expected investment that we had envisaged earlier on. My next slide, please. Again, my next slide just summarizes what I spoke to earlier on regarding the different investors that have come into our shores, and also it looks at the capacity of jobs that they've created, and also the space that they've occupied in terms of the plant size. And on my right-hand side, it talks to the number of activities that are actually carried out in this investment, as also outlined in granular details in the previous slides. And again, proud to say some of the investments looks at more than 500 robots that are actually operating at one of our investors, and also contributing to a lot of technological advancements and growth creation for the country. My next slide, please. I think also my next slide talks to the different joint ventures that have happened between the different countries, which we look at the ATD being an alliance between a South African company and a Thai-based company, where they have collaborated on a JV to actually be the local supplier for the Ford plant. And also, the slide also talks to the other countries that have contributed. Next slide, please. Okay, the next slide then sums up the investment pipeline as we've depicted earlier on. And safe to say this investment pipeline will boast 2 OEMs that are coming as investors, and they already signed letters of intent for phase 2. And we're looking at the total commitments of this investment exceeding the 2.5 billion in the next 5 years. That will probably give us 1,500 plus additional direct jobs that will be created out of this investment. And out of these, as you're going to see later on, there are 6 black industrialists that are part of the investment pipeline that we are facing or have attracted of late. And again, it will look at the new NEV value chains, as this is one of the key fundamental growth points for the entire world, where we look at new energy vehicles or new electric vehicles as part of the growth of the automotive sector and the changing of the world automotive formulation. And that will give rise to a lot of manufacturing activities. It also will draw a lot of collaboration with the African countries, where we're going to see South Africa receiving a lot of mineral resources that are needed for the development of the battery manufacturing plants across the entire continent, cobalt, lithium, and so forth. So these are some of the soil resources that will be drawn from the different countries across the continent. So you're going to see a lot of activities that are going to come from the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement from a beneficiation or supplying of raw material for the development of the NEV. Next slide, please. I think the next slide then zooms into the different investors. I think what's important for these slides for us is to highlight the number of Black industrialists that are being attracted into the SEZ, and also the contribution that they've made and the facilities that they're looking for. And some of these are going to be the key drivers for jobs that are needed for this country. And safe to say that we've received letters of intent from AH Logistics, Habar, Ford. And the next slide, please. And again, this talks further to these Black industrialists that I've spoken about earlier on, that are going to be part of the investment and the pipeline feeder into SEZs, where we're going to see the infusion of the PDI groups into the sector, and grow more also into these mergers and acquisitions that are going to be taking and feeding into the OEMs space. Next slide, please. Yeah, again, I think this is just the finishing up of the investment pipeline. And so is the next slide, please, again. And also the next slide, again, also speaks to the 6 Black industrialists that I mentioned earlier on, that are going to be part of the growth of the phase 2. And some are already looking at being incorporated into some of the aspects of the early phases of growth within our SEZ currently. So we are in talks with some of these Black industrialists, and also we are finding ways of supporting them to actually solicit more funding so that they're able to be part of the growth that's needed. And next slide, please. I think the next slide also talks to further investment pipeline that we had interactions with, and this investment pipeline keeps on growing on daily basis. As also recently yesterday, we had another interest that came in also in the NEV space, that also in the process of being the next pipeline of investors. And we hope the next engagements that we're going to have in some of the conferences will assist us to solicit more investment also for the outer phases, for the phase 3 and phase 4 future development. Next slide, please. I think the next slide also just highlights the investment pipeline, as I spoke to earlier on. Next slide, please. Again, it also highlights the interest, and it highlights some of the letters of interest that have been received, and also the commitment that some of these are making to be part of our future growth. And so that gives us comfort that we have more than enough investment pipeline to feed us up to beyond phase 3 at the moment. And these numbers keeps on growing on daily basis, as well as we engage and attract and market ourselves quite robustly to make sure that we are visible as a formidable facilitator and a catalyst for for these OEM or for these component manufacturers to be in our SEZ. Next slide, please. I think the management model of the SEZ is one of the questions. Although my other presentation have a more greater presentation, but it's fine. I'll talk to this one. I think if you look at from the management model, there's 3 shareholders, which is DTIC 33%, GDET, Gauteng Department of Economic Development 33%, and the city of Tshwane. And from this IGR shareholding has enabled the project to move at the fastest speed in the development of any infrastructure project in this country in the longest time. And I think the collaboration between these 3 spheres of government has enabled flow of communication, common collaboration, and also pooling of resources to be able to make sure that a successful project that has changed the landscape of the automotive industry in terms of employment is realized. And I think out of the board composition, there's 3 members from each composition or sphere of government, and also involve the private sector, which in this case is the 4th as part of the board membership. And again, board committees are managed through subcommittees of the board, HR&DEMCO, audit and risk, infrastructure, investment, social and ethics. So these are some of the board committees that are part of the managing from the core governance perspective. Next slide, please. I think the next slide just depicts in granular the roles and responsibilities of each shareholder, and this has resulted in the project moving at a speed because each shareholder has a particular mandate and interest that they represent and are able to then act in assisting the project to grow and able to contribute meaningfully into that project. And I think on the right-hand side, the city of Tshwane has contributed some land in the phase 1A. And I think we are hoping that through robust engagement, city of Tshwane will then come in with more funding into the SEZ and also assist the SEZ to acquire more land for future phases so that we are able to grow in the particular direction. I think that has been one of some of the challenges that we've come through in the turbulence, of the journey, is that we have, some aspect that has to deal with the city. And at some point we were struggling to get through some of the challenges, but we're hoping on ongoing basis, we're able to then resolve some of these challenges that have come up, especially when it comes to issues of speed of delivery of the project, and also commitments that come from the city, from a funding and from a land perspective. Next slide, please. Okay, challenges and opportunity. The first challenge that we currently have is that at the beginning of the project, at the initial stages of investment, one of the commitments from a government perspective, what was made is that the automotive industry will be assisted on the South Corridor development, which is a rail corridor that comes from Gauteng. It passes 4 provinces, and then it ends up in Gqeberha, and that becomes the export and exit port for this initiative. And also it becomes an import port of entry rather, for the goods that are destined, or for the components that are destined to the plant, and also other OEMs. And I think some of the challenges that we've experienced here is a low infrastructure maintenance, and the issue of rolling stock, wagons, and signaling, which is part of the challenges that have come out of the custodian of TFR, which is a Transnet Freight Rail. I think there's been numerous discussions and engagement that we've had to try and resolve this, because at the initial of the investment, we had promised the movement of about 28 trains a week that will carry the 70 plus export market, and that has not gone very well, because we're currently sitting at around 25% usage of this corridor, and with the number of challenges that include theft, security issues, delays, and looping, and all other aspects of the challenges. I think it's one of the bone of contention right now with our investors, that this part of the end we've not been able to assist that, given that in the mandate of that does not reside within our control. So next slide, please. Okay, and then the next challenges, it also relates to the phase 3, the outer phases, predominantly the issue of land. As we know, the land is phase 3 land is privately owned, and the city of Tshwane has not budgeted for the acquisition of this land for use of TASES as per the agreement at the initial phases, that the city will be responsible for acquiring all land that are needed for the development. So this is an area we've been knocking on the city's door to try and resolve this, so that we can plan properly for the next phase 3, and also be able to secure the investment, and also assure the investors that they will have land when we grow into phase 3 and later to phase 4. I think this is one area that we're having a challenge, where we could potentially lose some opportunities in attracting more investment, because this land is not being secured, and yet we had planned to actually see some of the investment going to this land at later stages of the development. So again, this is not in tallying with the investment pipeline that we have. So it's one of the challenges that we will need intervention at all levels to actually assist us on this one. Next slide, please. Again, the issue of land for phase 4, I think I did speak to this earlier on. The issue of the phase 4 for planning purposes, because for us, this is also going to be an ideal portion of land for growth, so that when we do plan for investment and do advocate for growth of the SEZ, we are also assured that this land will be available to attract a lot of investors that are looking for huge lands, because we have a lot of investors that are looking for a lot of space to develop what they want to do. So I think, again, it's negotiations between the city, because we understand that the land has Standard Bank that had earmarked for housing development. So I think some of the agreements that date back as far as 2013, but we are currently also in discussions to try and see if we can resolve some of these. Next slide, please. Okay, future plans. I think the future plans will then talk to the energy mix strategy for TASES, and also looking at the new energy solutions that will assist us to go green, because part of the requirement by 2030 to 2025, the EU requirement is that nothing will be exported to Europe that has a carbon footprint or has a carbon production footprint in it. And I think part of this is that we're trying to see if we can go green at the early stages of our growth, so that it will also save us from a cost element, because some of these solutions we can then use it to derive third income streams for ourselves, where we are able to solicit these solutions, so that we're able to then leverage on the cost of electricity and sell the electricity at a cheaper rate for our tenants, which is an incentive on its own. And then at the same time, we then generate some revenue from the solutions that we have. So I think these are some of the solutions, which is solar and gas. Next slide, please. Again, the SEZs campus, as alluded earlier on, it's seen as opportunity for us to grow a number of areas that will come out of the SEZs campus. I think some of the areas that I've touched on is our ICT EDI center that we want to develop, where we have an ICT center to assist the local business to manage the ICT activities, and also looking at R&D, research and development, where we're going to collaborate with institutions of higher learning and other stakeholders to make sure that we constantly promote innovation and development of the sector, so that creates more opportunities and growth for the sectors that we feed and the population that we feed. And that, I think, that will assist us to actually be on top of our game as a nation. And also some of that will include the development of SMME desks that will assist locals, SMMEs in the neighboring townships, to migrate from being tier 4 to hopefully tier 1 SMMEs one day, where we're going to have incubation program that will assist them also to grow. And also that will talk to the Center of Excellence that will also look at the various skills that are STEM related, that are going to focus on science, technology, engineering, where we create a feeder pipeline from grade 10 up to postgraduate studies that will focus on the STEM or the automotive sector as a feeder into part of the growth and development of our country as well, so that we constantly give the feeder pipeline into the skills. I think because one of the challenges that we came across is that some of the, when the OEMs were, or some of the component manufacturers or the investors were starting productivity, they didn't have highly competent and trained staff in some of the areas. So they had to get foreign nationals to come into the country to try and supplement that aspect. So I think in our future growth, we want to be ready and be positioned to be able to be on the first class training level, so that we are able to provide these world-class interventions and also to assist OEMs to bridge the knowledge gap as well. So there's a number of initiatives that are planned around the business conferences, as also the manufacturing centers, where we're looking at also having some small mini factories that might look at also incubating some of the small component manufacturers, where they have small manufacturers that will be able to be their center base or small base, where they can grow from strength to strength. I think this is one of the future growth. And the next slide, please. Yeah, thanks. I'll just end there with this presentation, although I had some future, if I may just highlight some of the presentation, some aspects of the presentation that supposed to be loaded, was also the ability of the SEZ to create transport backward and forward linkages, where the transport value chain is harnessed through the SEZ. Because what we've realized is that if you look around the world, SEZs thrive on power, land, and logistics predominantly. If you look at the Chinese models, all of them have strengthened their position on the ability to create forward linkages because of the value chain. And I think for ourselves, given the fact that we have a tonnage, which is commodities, we're looking at 200,000 cars a year. And for me, that on its own becomes a commodity that we are able to feed into the transport value chain, and then create other businesses outside our SEZ, so that we don't have a myopic view of our SEZ. We look at it as a feeder into the value chain, into the systems of the air freight, the rail, the road, and the sea trade, because most of these, what we manufacture here, is what will actually end up being exported elsewhere across the country. And I think some of the challenges that have resulted in a lot of industries not growing exponentially. So, classic example is a mining, where mining has focused on the mining, but and not focused on the value chain of the transport logistics, which became the biggest cost of commodity trading as well nowadays, and also has resulted in some of the cartel practices around monopolizing some of the industries, and especially in the coal industry, for example. I think there's some of the lessons that we can learn, where we create value chains across, so that everyone that is associated with the SEZ benefits exponentially in some of the growth that we develop. I think some of the slide that was in our presentation was around the incentives and the value proposition. From ICZ.
Mr. Zulu?
Yes,
Mr.
Chair.
Zulu, can we just check, Committee Secretary, where you have the updated presentation, so that we actually go to these slides, because I think it's quite important.
Chair,
yes.
Chair, the presentation that we have is what Margot was sharing. We don't have an updated one, but we'll double check if we received one.
Okay.
And we will request them to submit one so we can forward it to members, Chair, if we don't have it.
Oh, that's great. Okay.
Because, yeah. All right.
Okay, then. Please proceed, Mr. Zulu.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think the slide then that I was going to forward has more granular information around also the incentives, where we look at the investor support, where we provide turnkey development solution, land lease packages. We also provide ICT infrastructure for these SEZs, and we also assist them in the skills development, where we contribute towards the skills development. We look at the skills needs of some of the SEZs, and we solicit funding to assist this SEZ to be able to have, to some of these investors rather, to have the right skills that are needed to be able to carry out some of the work that needs to be done. We also provide the fiber optic links, the servers, the electricity usage, and also dedicated logistics access for these. And also, additionally, we've got some of the incentive schemes, which looks at the 15% corporate tax to qualifying companies. And again, that looks at some of the tax leverages that some of these companies will leverage from. And I think what we're also embarking on from an employment perspective, we also want to position ourselves as a SDF for some of these investors, so that they are able to claim the 1% levy that they pay to SARS for the skills levy, so that that skills levy comes back and be able to be reused to actually grow the sector, and also look at some of the CSI program. Because if you look at the 7 pillars of empowerment, skills development is one of the areas of focus that we need to look at, besides ownership and professional procurement and equities. But some of the skills development is one of the 7 pillars. If you look at the BEE and other sector pillars of empowerment, I think there's one area we want to infuse in, so that the investors feel that we're part of the assistance that is required. And also, we're trying to assist them to find funding. Recently, we signed an MOU with the Automotive Industry Transformation Fund, where AITF has then made commitment to us that they're going to come into partnership with some of the investors that have financial challenges or have contract value, bankable contracts, that they will come in and assist them in terms of funding. And this is the agreement that we have, and we constantly want to feed into the new Black industrialists, and also people that are coming up with some of the innovative solution to the sector, where we see if they can be funded through the IATF partnership. And as part of it, we've also signed partnership with the various SEZs as well, to actually make sure that on yearly basis, we are able to avail funding for the skilling and capacity building of our SMMEs, of our technicians, of our TVET colleges, as well as collaborations with the universities. And again, our value proposition is to also become a one-stop shop for those EMs, because part of what you're doing now, we're looking at bilateral and multilateral relations from an IGR perspective, where we're engaging some of the embassies and try and see if we can have partnership at a teacher level, where some of these embassies or commissions, high commissions, have a business development unit that looks at country to country engagement, so that we are able to then engage on their needs, and these needs might fit into our SEZ and be able to assist some of the tenants to be able to be exposed to the international assistance, also B2B transaction, because some of the lessons learned from BRICS is that we need to expand our bilateral and multilateral engagement, so that we're able to then focus on the growth of the sector. I think in my two closing slides that I had earlier on I added, it was the issue of identified markets that we've seen, identified markets that could be opportunities. We looked at hydrogen as a way of powering most of the things that run in our SEZ, and it's where we're soliciting more investors to come with hydrogen solutions and see where we can collaborate. And also the battery manufacturing, I think we're getting a lot of interest now, where we're looking at this battery manufacturing investors that are coming to our SEZ, so that we can then future look at soliciting of raw materials and commodities through the African continent. I think that will be assisted by some of members of this committee to create what we call green lanes from the SARS perspective. Most of European countries use what they call green lanes, and I think these are the lanes that assist the seamless movement of goods across borders under a customs compliance accredited system, where we're able to see some of the movements, because some of the challenges with the raw materials in Africa is raw material getting accreditation through the system. I think part of what we're going to be needing in the future is this collaboration, so that this NEV opportunity becomes a reality for the African continent, so that we don't see this going outside the continent and come back beneficiated from other countries. And also the green train and the greening effect is one of the aspects that we put forward in the presentation. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that presentation, and we look forward to receiving the updated version. I see the hand of Honourable Mulder. Honourable Mulder, is this a question for the entities that have reported? I just wanted to... Honourable Mulder?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. When there's
can I note you? Honourable Mulder, can I note your hand? I just wanted to check with the DTIC officials on the platform, Mr. Molefane and Mr. Claassen, whether they have anything they want to add before I take hands from members, because in both presentations there were areas where the entities have requested interventions. Can I just check, Mr. Molefane and Mr. Claassen?
Yes. Thanks, Honourable Chair and Honourable members. Maybe let me just introduce myself. My name is Molefane. I'm the head of the SEZ program at the DTIC. I'm also privileged to serve as the board member for SEZs, including the chairing of the infrastructure committee. So we're quite intimately involved in the two SEZ, and mainly because obviously we are presiding over the policy, but also because we have keen interest in making sure that they thrive. So, Chair, I must indicate that I think through the presentation of SEZs, you must have seen that it's a moving train. This is where we tested the new approach that we presented to you, I think a year ago, when we said that given the challenges that we are confronted with concerning the SEZ program, learning from all the other SEZs that have been struggling, we requested that we be given an opportunity to test a new model. And we've tested that with SEZs. That's why through the presentation by the CEO, you would have seen that the TIC is directly involved, both in terms of coordination, but also in terms of the ownership and the board representation. We also made sure that the issue of coordination across spheres of government is also taken care of. Hence, we involved the three spheres of government, Gauteng and the city of Tshwane, through the ownership model. We each own 33.3%. We also working with the private sector being Ford. They're also directly involved in the SEZ. And in terms of contribution, which is also a challenge that we've been confronted with in many other SEZ, was the issue of land and bulk infrastructure. So in SEZ, again, we were privileged to engage with the city of Tshwane. The contributed land, the land that we are developing on, is owned by the city of Tshwane. The bulk infrastructure, the city of Tshwane, for the first time, we had municipality contributing towards bulk in the SEZ. I would recommend that when the portfolio committee chairperson, portfolio committees that allow the committee visits the SEZs, because that's the SEZ that we built in less than 24 months. We built roads, infrastructure, including top structures. We created over 3,000 jobs in 24 months. But also, I think, in terms of the challenges in SEZs, we have beautiful challenges because we've got a massive interest and appetite from investors. These land challenges. In other SEZs, we have land, but we don't have investors. But in SEZs, it's different. Of course, we're also confronted with the challenge of electricity, as the CEO has indicated. We're working directly with the city of Tshwane and the Eskom. Yesterday, I was there on site meeting with Eskom. We appointed a service provider to develop a substation. We're dealing with the challenges there, including, of course, community protests, but we were able to resolve those challenges. So I think on the tax incentives, the two SEZs are not yet benefiting from the tax incentives. That is a debate and engagement that is ongoing between the DTIC and the National Treasury. So at the moment, out of the 10/11 SEZs, only 6 are benefiting from the tax incentives. We've had a number of discussions with the Treasury on policy matters. So that is an ongoing discussion, Chair, that we would be resolving with the National Treasury. So I must say that this is a model that we are currently testing with other new SEZs that are coming into the stream, being Namakwa as well, which was recently approved by Cabinet. Would be replicating what we did at SEZs in Namakwa. One thing that helped us drive this is what we call tripartite agreement. So there is an agreement that we signed between the three spheres of government, DTIC, Gauteng, and the city of Tshwane, which help us govern the SEZ. We would be replicating this in other provinces. Of course, the difference would be that we have district and the local municipalities. In that context, we call it a quadripartite agreement. But with that, Chair, I think at the DTIC, we're quite happy with the presentations made by both the CEOs. At OR Tambo, for the longest time, we've been struggling. But I must say that, again, if the portfolio committee allows, you can visit that the SEZ is a construction site. Things are moving there. We've managed to resolve some of the challenges, including the investments that for the longest time we've been struggling. But with the new approach, I'm quite happy with the progress made by Gauteng province insofar as this is a development. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Molofane. Are you covered, Mr. Klaasen? Okay, I'm not sure whether he's still on the platform. I didn't check. Okay, so I've got the hand of Honorable Mulder for interaction with the presentations. Can I see the hands of other members, please? Honorable Mbiani. Honorable Monakedi. Honorable Malamacha. That's what we have for now. Can I invite Honorable Mulder?
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and thank you to the presenters for the comprehensive presentation on a very important subject. My questions will be short, as I always do, just only two questions. The one is speak to challenges of, I don't see in any of the two reports the challenges as far as electricity supply is concerned. And we all know that it's a well-known fact that the motor industry, for instance, are suffering because of lack of Eskom to provide constant energy or electricity. So I want to know why the challenges of electricity insufficient or no constant electricity supply is not mentioned in the reports. And if not, does it mean that it doesn't pose a challenge? That's the first question. The second question would be about service delivery of support of local government from Ekurhuleni side and Tshwane Metro side in this instance. We all know that the local government has got great challenges, and I want to know if it shouldn't be mentioned in the report, or isn't it seen as a possible threat or a challenge that service delivery of local governments is in such a state that it won't be able to provide sufficient service or support to actually make a special economic zone work. Thank you, Honourable Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Mulder. Honorable Mbiani.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, for the opportunity. Chairperson, first, let me welcome the presentation. It's very much comprehensive, and it shows that in terms of the TAZED and GGDA, we are moving forward, and also propose that we take this badly forward in terms of the other SEZ in the other that are designated in other provinces. Chairperson, I'll start by a clarity-seeking question. Maybe it will be integrated to the one that was asked by Honorable Melde, because here we said we do have sufficient power in terms of the 16 MVA, but the required one is 20 MVA. So my question here is to check in terms of the other 23 potential investment. Are there any power generation strategy in terms of the solar power generation or any other, or gas, that will be able at least to augment the power that you have? As we all know that the power currently, we have some challenges in terms of the power generation. And also acknowledge the Skills Development Academy program. Just wanted to check whether there's any collaboration with the local universities, TVET and other higher educational institution, so that we are able to cap as well this thing of unemployment. People goes to university and come back and see. While you can be able to collaborate and identify students that can be able to form part of the program moving forward. Chair, also maybe the land issue as a challenge. I don't know, maybe we also need sister department, the issue of land even if we're engaging with the municipality, we know these two municipalities, the Tshwane and also the one of Ekurhuleni, we have some serious challenges, but I don't know whether they have a sister department at national level that they're able to at least engage with in terms of the land issue. And also the social compact in terms of the beneficiaries. How are the people from around the location be able to benefit, and how are they benefiting currently as we speak in terms of the economic value chain, supplies, or because in terms of whether they are getting employment in terms of the direct employment. Also acknowledge, Chair, the integrated transport system, the one that said, I think there was no slide, but I heard the presenter talking about air flight and also transport that will be able to ferry goods and so forth, just to check how far are they, and it's possible to link all the transport for goods into one space in terms of the TAZED one. Then on the OR Tambo, Chair, the issue of infrastructure financing and also the recognition by National Treasury vis-a-vis the CIT incentive. What role will the department, the TTIC, play around the engagement with the National Treasurer and also the CIT incentive? Because it's very much important. We're talking of National Energy Fund that is available to deal with the energy crisis, and also the recognition that some other entities within the DTIC can be able to assist in terms of the DFIs. Chair, also my worry is about the organogram, the vacant funded position, and also demographic challenges. But I think we will get from the presenter. And also check the arrangement. There's this thing of 3C and 3D. Which one is viable? Because we must take note that these other SEZ in other provinces, maybe they have a challenge of this 3C and 3D. If you can get clarity from there. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Chair.
Thank you for your 8 questions, Honorable Mbiani. Honorable Monakedi.
Chair, thank you very much. I also want to welcome good presentations, the 2 presentations as done. Both of them show that indeed there is a lot of progress that is being made.
Speak closer to your microphone, please, Honorable Monakedi.
Okay, is it better now?
Yes, because there's a lot of background noise, but proceed.
No, I was saying I want to welcome the good presentations as done by the 2 SEZs. And perhaps I need to just go straight into my questions. The first one is with regard to the governance arrangements at the OR Tambo SEZ. As it is the city of Ekurhuleni is sort of participating, but the arrangement are not tied. It's a loose arrangement, but I do know that there is a process to make sure that the city becomes part of the shareholding at some point. So I just want to know as to whether, going forward, the private sector is going to be allowed a space to also be part of either governance structure or even at the shareholding level. My second question is with regard to the non-recognition by National Treasury in terms of Section 51. I think it relates to OR Tambo SEZ. In the presentation, it is indicated that National Treasury couldn't grant the recognition as requested. I just want to understand what were the reasons advanced by National Treasury. Is there a space for reconsideration of their decision, and also the impact of the decision by National Treasury on the operations of the OR Tambo SEZ? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Malamacha. Honorable Malamacha, unmute yourself.
Morning, Chair, morning, colleagues.
Good morning.
Let me start by saying I'm covered by the latter speaker, especially when they welcome the presentation and further appreciate the good work done. You know, where there's delivery, where there's good story to tell, as this department led by Minister EP, we must really appreciate. It's just there are a few things that I want to know in a form of education to other SEZs. That in Tshwane, how is your relationship with the municipality, apart from them gave you a land? You know, working in Tshwane, chairperson, under this unworkable condition of coalition where 9 billion can just overnight vanish. The following day, the mayor resigns, where the workers' rights is not given priority, people can go to strike, there's nothing. But yet, our department is navigating to really achieve on this, where there's huge water crisis, people's rights is violated by whoever is in charge, yet you are managing. How is your relationship with that city when coming to those? And they become part of your challenges when you deal with them? And how best do you deal with those and can share with other SEZs? The other issue, Comrade, is on the stakeholders. If we don't emphasize that, we are very pleased the manner in which travel manually did not necessarily hamper the progress of the day in Tshwane. Then how best, or what is it that you can tell to the other SEZ? And can you share with us the importance of working with the stakeholders? Now, the second.
I'm not sure if it's my connectivity. It seems like we've lost Honorable Malamacha.
You're correct, Chair. We have lost.
There he's back.
Oh, there.
We lost you. Honorable Malamacha, we lost you, ne? The last point we heard, you spoke about the stakeholders.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was saying that they share with us the importance of working with the stakeholders that include the locals and the housing beneficiary on that. The issue of the Springs one, the OR Tambo one, in terms of the onogram, we will be very interested to know how it is and how it looks like, where interest is to serve all the races, disability, women, young people, and the rest. But in terms of the relationship, I will also want to use the very same question I applied to Tshwane, because it's the very same unstable coalition government, and to say how do they manage to navigate to produce good results as they are now. We are very happy with this. One has managed to pass. They have seen the good work done by the OR Tambo. but we're saying our objective is not to SEZs and other SEZs like of the city. How best, what is the experience that they can share with us so that we are able to ensure that all the SEZs get good work done like SDF. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. I don't have any further hands. Can I hand back to the team? I don't know who's going to coordinate the answering of questions. Is that you, Mr. Buthelezi?
No, Chair, I would suggest that let the presenters respond, and then if there's any other further comments to be made, from the acting group CEO or myself, that we would then do so. But let Thandi and Becca, if you guys can start, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Noble.
The HOD, thank you, Chair. So I'm going to go through the questions. So the first question was around electricity supply by Member Mulder. Well, I suppose because the JMP is a bit of a smaller area, what we have found is that we run about 3 generators in the JMP itself. So your Into-Food, for example, which is agro-processing, also run their own huge generator for their operations as backup power. However, what we are now exploring with the assistance of Siemens, who are into, just energy saving methods, etc., we are exploring putting up solar panels on the new buildings. However, it's a conversation which is still quite fresh. We're having conversations with tenants, and we are hoping that that will also come in probably towards the end of the current financial year. So in terms of backup power, we run generators which are diesel fueled, as you can imagine, and it has been working quite well. And I think, Chair, the relationship with the city has also come in quite handy in the sense that we've got a direct line to the head of services, including electricity provision. And whenever there are problems, because what used to happen when the buildings were still under construction was that in the operating, whenever load shedding ended, we would not be switched back on. So we would have conversations with the city, and we would get assistance quite quickly. Initially, obviously, it was a little bit, a bit of a delayed response, but we've managed to get to a point where we're able to call each other and have conversations and have issues resolved quite easily. In terms of the service delivery on the part of the city, as members can imagine, bulk infrastructure is the competency of the municipality, but because of issues that we know, most municipalities are facing in this country, that's the reason province has to step in and find money to fund bulk infrastructure development, particularly for the OR Tambo SEZ. And so what we're currently doing is having conversations with the city around the bulk fees that they want to levy. For example, the quote that we got for the development of the precinct 2, which measures 29 hectares, we got a quote of over 58 million rands for bulk fees to the city. The development itself is just under 300 million. So we're in conversation as to, the role that the city needs to play in relation to its future shareholding and its relationship with the SEZ itself. So far, things are moving a little bit slowly, but because we're going to only be going to market soon, we hope that by the time we start the development, that the issue of bulk fees would have been resolved. Our plea is that the fees be settled on the basis of the city then holding a share on the SEZ at a later stage. On collaboration, the question around collaboration on skills development, Chair and members, we've got an internship program where we have collaborated with City of Ekurhuleni. They have a database of students who are studying, various courses, but what we're focused on is students who are studying anything that has to do with construction, given the fact that we are still at a point of infrastructure development in parts of our pieces of land and a little bit in precinct 1. So what we've done is through that database, we identify students who are studying anything or who have studied anything within the context of construction. What we then do is we select them from various competencies within construction, quantity surveyors, civil engineers, etc., and we then put them on the project through the building contractor and for a period of 12 months. So in the past 2 years, we've put through 36 students through our infrastructure development projects. And what we are proud to share with the committee is that out of the 36, we've had about 3 or 4 get employment, some from the contractors, some from the subcontractors. And so we are continuing with the project. Currently, we have about 3 in conjunction with the construction sitter, who we've put on the last building that is being constructed. The intention, Chair and members, is that we want to put about 10 or so students on the bulk infrastructure development program for precinct 2 when the infrastructure development starts. So we put students for a period of 12 months simply because we'd like them to get some form of accreditation or recognition towards their professionalization, with them being part of a live construction project. On the land issues, because all our precincts have been designated as part of the OR Tambo SEZ, we currently do not have any major issues. However, I suppose as we want to expand as an SEZ, it's a conversation that we will then continue to have with the city. In terms of local people and businesses benefiting from the work that is happening in the SEZ. So what we did from a construction perspective was we had set aside in terms of percentages in relation to the work going to local SMMEs within Ekurhuleni. We're monitoring that quite closely, Chair, and things are working out as intended so far on the project, at least in relation to the contractor. What we also do is in relation to the students themselves, as far as is possible, we give first preference to the youth of Ekurhuleni specifically. So so far the project has been going well. I think it's one or two students who are in other areas of construction where we couldn't find such students or youth or young people that we had to go outside the boundaries of Ekurhuleni. But generally, Ekurhuleni is benefiting in different ways in relation to the project itself. I will leave the question of engagements with National Treasury to the DTIC. On the organogram, I think the issue is the demographics and when we're going to fill vacant positions. So because we fund our positions from the income that we make, we tend to firstly, wait and just explore and look at our cash flow projections. And then the intention is that the positions that are indicated are old, come from the 22-23 financial year, we will fill in the current financial year. And the ones, some of the new positions in 23-24 will be filled towards the end of the financial year. But the issue basically, Chair, is that, it's just funding. We have to be very cautious about how we fund our positions and do the best that we can with the capacity that we currently have. And I think the one thing that I want to share with the members in relation to the demographics is that in relation to the leadership of the SEZ itself, the entire leadership of the SEZ, the CEO, the entire executive team are all female. And Chair, I must say it's not by default, it's by design. I suppose I just personally, it's a personal issue to me. I just want to dispel the myth and then the narrative that women can't work together and actually do good things. So what the work that you see at OR Tambo is that it's actually spearheaded by a team of women. And we intend to keep it that way, Chair. And as we fill other vacant positions, particularly at leadership level. The issue of the 3C, 3D, I'll also leave to the DTIC. On governance arrangements, and whether we will engage the private sector, I've already spoken about the involvement of the city of Ekurhuleni. Chair, the intention is to engage the private sector. We've got quite a good relationship with TPS Group, and we hope that at a later stage, there will be one of the stakeholders that we engage to be part of the shareholding of the SEZ. And that's just my thoughts, Chair. We haven't solicited it in province. It's issues that we will discuss at a later stage once our business case is concluded. On the issue of the National Treasury's non-recognition of the GIDZ in terms of Section 51G, Chair, I suppose the National Treasury's argument is sound, is reasonable, and they're saying in terms of the SEZ Act, you are supposed to be an SEZ company which is not a subsidiary of another entity. So because you are still part of an entity, we will not recognize you to an extent that we therefore approve a bank account for yourself. Of becoming a standalone company. And once that happens, then come back to us and we'll consider your application. So we're working quite closely with the DTIC in that regard. Lastly, Chair, in terms of stakeholders, the issue of stakeholder relations cannot be overemphasized, Chair. For example, during construction, the reason our construction, even though there were challenges here and there, we had a CLO, a client liaison officer, and that worked very well for us. Whenever there were issues, they would be the first to know, or they would be the first to engage the community. And so far, the project has actually, I think it's the construction started.
I think we've lost Thandi.
I've mentioned our relationship with TBS Group. We are also, continuing to work on that with a view of one of the proposals that are on the table is that when we look at Precinct 2, a portion of the land should be designated to further expand mineral beneficiation. And it's something that we're in conversations with TBS on. Chair, I'd like to pause there. I think I've dealt with all the questions. Thank you very much. I'll give over to Becca.
Yes, and if you can just speak to the last question asked by Honorable Malamacha. You've dealt with the organogram and you've done very well in terms of gender, but he also asked about youth and people with disability. If you're not able to answer those questions now, you can always send the replies to the committee.
Okay, thanks, Chair. We'll provide the demographics later on, but I must just share with the committee that we are very passionate about bringing young people on board, particularly in relation to the various professions. Your construction, for example, our team that leads infrastructure development is made up of young people, who have studied civil engineering, quantity surveying, etc. However, Chair, we will submit a report that just provides that breakdown. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Becca, come in, please.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, HOD. Yeah, I'll start with Ms. Honorable Melda's question around the electricity. I think our slide did highlight that we currently have a maximum of 16 MVA available in our SEZ, and that we are almost at full capacity. The last time we checked, we're almost at 14 plus MVA. So with regards to the new phases, which is phase 2, we have no electricity available for township establishment and also to power the phase 2. However, there is a solution that I think Mr. Mawoto alluded to, the issue of the Easter Fabric solution, which was a collaboration between City of Tshwane, Eskom, and DTIC. We are hoping that will come onto stream, hopefully by end of next month, September, and that will then assist us to have the required 32 MVA and then the ability to township establish also to power the phase 2. But however, our challenges of electricity will not be over, because this is a temporary loan for 3 years. And after 3 years, we need to have another solution that will actually power the future phases of the SEZ and the current SEZ. So what we're currently looking at is the 2 solutions: the gas solution that will give us 20 MVA, and we busy in the process with designs and development of that at various stages, and we're hoping to probably get the solution by 2024 towards the third quarter. And then the solar power will be the one that will give us 10 MVA, which will come into stream by the probably last quarter of this year. That will give us the 10 MVA to supplement the power. But again, our power problems are power related to ability to supply our SEZ, but also futuristically, we look at compliance, as I spoke to the issue of the legislation of zero carbon footprint that is required by the EU. So again, our power solutions will always be a challenge until we hopefully go green and off the grid. And that's why we're looking at a number of solutions, mixed energy solutions that will come from waste, biomass, and so forth. So we are having that challenge for future phases. However, we're lucky to say that despite the pylons having collapsed, we had temporary disruptions because 9 pylons collapsed in the city, and then we were able to restore that through the help of the city. But again, it still was a temporary solution until they fixed the pylons again. So I think that aspect is of the power challenges I've addressed. And then I think the issue of the service delivery, I think it's issue linked to the relationship. I think I would like to maybe answer this question in conjunction with the question from Ms. Honorable Malemache on the relationship with the city. I think safe to say that we had some challenges with the city in that regard, as far as concerned in terms of the relationship, and that has ranged from the city not availing land for phase 3 as promised, and we're currently still in negotiations where the city constantly tells us that they're engaging the private owner of the land. And the second challenge is that we have no funding for external bulk, and we went and presented our case despite us having submitted to the city last year in terms of our funding needs. When we went on just prior to their new financial year, we did a presentation in the ESCO, including the city manager. We were told there's no funding for us. We should come back mid-December when they do their reviews. So currently say the city is not with the land of phase 3 and then the funding aspect. And I think also what we find is that, there's a disconnect within the city between the role of economic development versus the technical division and some of the divisions where some of the city officials or the structures are not aware of the relationship or the shareholding that the city has on the SEZ. And that's not helping us a lot, despite us having told, a number of meetings. Every time you go to a meeting, they don't understand why you link to the city and why the city should help you to be able to do things with speed. And I think this is based on the phase 1 that the city was able to assist with a lot of approvals that were needed to establish, and that has helped us to actually deliver this project within 2 years time frame. And again, this is some of the relationship that we're trying to harness with the city. Every time you need to then present to a different audience from time to time to try and cement the relationship. So I think from that aspect, we are having serious challenges with the city in terms of engagement. But although in some aspects they do come in to assist, but of late, I think for phase 2, phase 1 was okay, everything went well. Now with the phase 2, we're having a lot of resistance and challenges for the city, because it's the same people that are supposed to give us funding. It's the same stakeholder that is supposed to give us speedy approvals. And this is the same funder that is supposed to support us in all other aspects of this development. And we're having challenges with that. If I could go to Honorable Mbuyane's questions around the skills development, we are engaging in a number of skills development initiatives that we've done. We've trained a number of individuals in the previous part of the project, and currently now we're also embarking on a new skills development phase, having partnered with a lot of institution, including the German Institute, that has also availed some assistance in terms of funding of some of the TVET college students that are coming from the locals, townships of Mamelodi, Esteras, and surrounding. So we are embarking on that, and also we've got bigger plans on the skills development going forward in our partnership with the various stakeholders, the SEZs, UIF, NSF, and the related, where we've made applications for capacity building of the province at large, and also our SEZ in a number of skills initiatives. So we are doing quite a lot there. And also regards the partnerships, we've got a number of partnerships with the Tshwane University of Technology, University of Pretoria, with vets on some of the research aspects, and also from the business schools of Gibbs, with some of the engagement that we've had in their collaboration with Toyota Academy, where we're trying to assist them in some of their MBA programs, where they want to have a module that focuses on the automotive and MBA as a specialization at MBA level. So we are discussing in terms of the curriculum. I think we can assist them up to quality assuring that at other QC, not QCT or CHE level. I think also from the lower levels, we are partnering with CETAs that are looking from NQF level 2 up to NQF level 6 skills development aspect. So we are doing various partnerships and engaging TVET colleges, university, and at large to try and solicit and harness some of the skills. I think part of our future plans is then to do a benchmarking exercise where we go some of the best practices in Germany, USA, where some of the OEMs come from, to see what are the best practices in terms of their high-level technical training, where we can piggyback on some of the initiatives and probably foster training agreements with them, where we could have a course that's run between the two countries, either online or on any other distance learning format, where we are able to then capacitate some of the South Africans using some of the best and world-class intervention. And again, futuristically, we're looking at the acquiring of the simulator training. We are in discussion with some of these simulator initiatives that are across the province to see if we can have simulated training, so that when some of these learners go into these factories, they have simulated training on some of the machinery, on some of the best practices, some of the work, the timing, the sequencing, and understanding all the parts that are needed in the components manufacturing sector, so that by the time we place them on job training, the person is ready. So it's almost like a work readiness program that will fast track a lot of development. We've seen how simulators have fast track development in the aviation space. So we want to take the similar model and try and infuse it in the automotive sector so that we fast track learning. The land issue, I think I spoke to. Question, Mr. Mbuyane, is around the land issue where phase 3 is not secured, as well as phase 4. And these are some of the challenges that we have. Despite all the investors that we have, we don't have enough land to accommodate these investors. And I think for us, it's frustrating at a later stage it will frustrate some of the investors who might lose hope or even decide to go somewhere else and do their investment. So that's a work in progress on a daily basis, and I think we rely on the city pretty much on this. The social compact, it's a very important aspect that we've mastered. We've signed a social compact with the community of Mamelodi. They have a community project committee which sits every Tuesday, and it consists of all the council awards that sit in that CPC, that we are able to engage the communities on a number of issues. But over and above, we have also the community liaison officers that are in underemployment that we are enabled to, they are deployed in the various communities where they are dealing with issues of CSI, community development, and other areas of managing community issues, and also soliciting partnerships with us from radio stations and other other interested organizations like the Mamelodi Chamber of Commerce, which is a strategic partner that we're engaging with, and also some of the work that we've done. We've sponsored on the June 16. We sponsored some of the teams with jerseys, and so that they become part of us in terms of marketing us, as also be part of us and showing us our commitment towards them being part of the Tazas community, where we participate in their local sports and show our presence and market, and also create a bit of hype so that the communities also feel appreciated for the work we've done, because they are valuable input to our project, because they've protected this project with their lives. They've sacrificed meetings, night times, weekends, and all other aspects of hindrances. The community has been fully supportive of this project. So we are constantly making sure that part of our social compact focuses on the procurement from the township economy. That's why I think one of my stats did highlight that our procurement spend in township economy exceeds R1 billion, and that is also our commitment towards SMME development, where we've seen more than 300 SMMEs having been created out of these social compact delivery for us. So that's one aspect. And then the fifth question was around the linkages, transport linkages. I think for me, these are very important discussions that should take place at government levels, especially portfolio committee level, where we see a case of Tazas producing 736 cars in one day, and now we're sitting at more than 720 cars a day. And 720 cars a day, they are taken by truck, which is part of transport logistics. If you calculate, do your math on those, you're looking at about roughly about 89 trucks a day, depending on the size. Some carry 6, some carry 9, depending what trucks are actually being on the road. So for us, that's a significant contribution to the transport value chain that we don't actually acknowledge as a contribution, because that gives sales to tires, petrol, diesel, and creates employment. And that's the linkages that we contribute towards as through our 70% export and also local transportation. And also linked to that is the rail, which I spoke to, where we were looking at about 28 trains a week, which would employ a lot of number of people between ourselves, Gauteng, and the 4 provinces, from your security, the infrastructure, the loops, the signaling, and all the marshalling, all the aspects of the logistics that are involved in the rail logistics, which we should have been creating some of these linkages. And also these linkages will then feed into the African continent, going north, where we see the realization of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, where we see cross-border transportation of these vehicles into the neighboring countries, whether SEDC or going up north into Angola and surrounding. And again, the transport link that I referred to talks to the same cars being exported now overseas. If you look at the transport value chain from Gauteng to the sea, what ends up at the port is the handling of these cars through a park car park at the port terminal, and also the exporting of these via the ship. And if you look at the contribution that we've done in this value chain, we've guaranteed some of the ports at least 2 car carriers every week, and each car carrier is carrying about between 2,000 and 5,000 cars at one particular point. So again, this is a value chain and transport linkages that are part of the value chain that we should see how SEZs are contributing towards the other sectors and the value chain, which we might not even calculate in terms of jobs, the contribution, the economic contribution, and all the value chain. I think that's a discussion that to take probably a portfolio level to see, the contribution. Also linked to air freight, when the Ford had a shortage of the semiconductors and some of the components. Some of the components manufacturers use air freight, expensive as it was, but the on-time delivery, just-in-time delivery needed it to be maintained through that initiative. So I think for me, in terms of those questions, and then the demographics, I think the demographics, we can supply that slide to the committee, which talks about the demographics and then the post. And the listing of the 3C, 3D, I think we're still waiting our listing. I think we've had various engagement with National Treasury. We are not listed as yet. So there's been various engagement between the province and National Treasury on the listing. So I'll end with Mr. Honorable Mabuyana's question. I'm going to move to Honorable Monakedi's questions. I think it was talking to governance arrangements. I think governance was on the issues of the 3 spheres of government from our side, and also looking at the various shareholders having representative that sit in our board from a governance perspective, and making sure that we deliver as a SEZ, and the SEZ program becomes a success because they have a vested interest from a different shareholder. And then the question from Honorable Chris Malemache is the relationship with the COT. I think I spoke to here earlier on that, the issue with the city has been the payments from the city from work that needs to be done, especially bulk services. We struggle getting that funding coming through a number of times, and so it gives frustration in terms of the delivery and payment of service providers sometimes, because there's a delay, and then there's the issue of electricity, which I spoke to, and then the delays in the various approvals from the city, where sometimes we are taken from pillar to post by the same interested stakeholders. So sometimes we find challenges. The same city, there's an interest, also frustrating some of the processes. And then I think the issue, the last aspect was around the importance of stakeholders. We value our stakeholders. We have a very stakeholder relationship, and we're trying to strengthen that aspect where our stakeholders ranges from our internal stakeholders within our investors, within our SEZs, within our sister entities as well, and also the same in stakeholders also goes to the communities that we serve, that we want to employ. And that's why we've been able to source employment from local communities, and also source a lot of SMME work that has been done in the township economy. So contributing to TIDA, GOD, as well as some of the important aspects of transformation agendas, and also giving back to the communities. I think for me, those are the questions that I got from the audience, from the honorable members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zulu. Mr. Molafane, there are 2 questions regarding infrastructure financing and 3C and 3D. Which one is viable? That was referred to the department. Are you able to respond on those 2 areas?
Yes, Honorable Chair, thanks very much. Maybe I must just start off by just maybe adding some generic answers to the questions.
Thank you.
One is straight to Honorable Mulder's question about electricity and service delivery. I must just mention, Honorable Mulder, that I think in all the presentations, documents, we mentioned those two as the key challenges confronting industrialization in the country. In the SEZ program, for example, in the current quarter, we saw a decline in terms of job numbers from the SEZs. And when we did investigations engaging with the SEZs as to what led to drop in terms of jobs, in the main, they were attributed to the electricity, load shedding, and so forth. So many companies had to scale down their production, reducing the shifts. Other companies, because it was winter, they decided to go into maintenance phase to reduce costs because of the electricity demand. Others had to, unfortunately, lay off their employees. So it continues to be a challenge. But in terms of what we thought could be a solution, is that we're working with all the SEZs now. There's a program that is spearheaded by our national PMU at the IDC, which looks at the alternative energy sources to the SEZ. I think the CEO of TAZAS has touched on that. TAZAS, we're looking at the gas, but in others, we're looking at solar, where, for example, the SEZ could be a partner and a distributor of electricity, partner with the private sector. So that is the alternative source of energy that could help us resolve the challenges. And of course, the other challenge is service delivery challenges in the SEZs and the protests. So what we're trying to do with the new SEZ program or approach is that we're trying to position the SEZs in the main as some form of development agencies to provide services beyond just the fenced boundaries. We are now testing this again with the new SEZs that we're planning in Limpopo, Dubatse area, where we're trying to look at the entire corridor. As you know, for example, Dubatse or Sekhukhune has over 40 mines that are operating there. There's just primary production, nothing at the downstream level. So we're trying to use the SEZ to look at anchor projects across the district, including the Steelport area, where it could help us provide even services working directly with the municipalities. And how we're going to strengthen that again is through that agreement that I've mentioned that we've entered into in Tshwane, where we then had to lock in the municipalities. And part of the reason why we had to do that was because of the different ruling parties at different spheres of government, but also instabilities in Tshwane because mayors were changing. But with Tshwane, and I must say that we worked smoothly. We've never experienced challenges, despite the fact that we were working during the difficult times in 2020 when we had a hard lockdown. But through a political forum, which we are re-establishing again, we had a political forum that was led by the Premier, MEC, the Mayor of City of Tshwane, and the Deputy Minister Majola in the DTIC, that almost met on a monthly basis to track progress and also to help us unlock challenges. So it was through that committee that we were able to accelerate the development of the agreement, where all the parties signed agreement, committed, and we're able to make even commitments in one meeting, as opposed to following these conventional bureaucratic processes, because the meeting was a meeting of all the accounting and executive authorities. So it helped us in terms of avoiding the municipal challenges. And it was through that committee, we also established the technical committee that met every Monday. I chaired that committee myself. We were able to convince the City of Tshwane to establish special committees to ensure that we accelerate the approval processes of all the municipal approvals, be it building plans, site development plans, because we had 24 months timeline, so we did not have a privilege of going beyond the timeline. So it was through that structure that we were able to work with the City of Tshwane to ensure that we would resolve that. And this is something that I think, as mentioned by the CEO, that experiencing it again would re-establish those committees to ensure that the phase 2 goes smoothly. And again, the issue of electricity for phase 2, it remains a challenge. But I think the CEO has mentioned and the issues related to the temporary solutions and the long-term solutions. Beyond the Easter Fabric, we also working with the ESCOM to establish an infit, a bigger substation. It's called Veldepes. As you know, the Pretoria East has got electricity challenges there generally. Because of the substations that are overloaded, they can't even load shed, because once you do that, it trips. So there's a process to establish a new, a bigger substation called Veldepes by ESCOM and the city of Tshwane, which would then give us permanent solutions, of course, with the challenges related to load shedding, but insofar as giving us the volume that we require, or MVAs that would require, that would be a long-term solution over and above the renewable energy alternatives that the CEO has mentioned. On the issue of the tax incentives, and I think I did mention that we've been engaging with Treasury. The only SEZs that have qualified for tax incentives are 6 at the moment, 2 in the Eastern Cape, 2 in KZN, and the one in the Western Cape, which is Saldanha Bay and Maluti Apofung. The others, these were approved at the same time. The others, National Treasury indicated to us that they will be case by case. So we are working with the SEZs to ensure that we package these business cases, the current one being the Atlantis, and I think quite soon we're working with the TASAS team now to ensure that we're packaging the TASAS one, and of course OR Tambo would also follow, including the others. So at the moment, is only 6 SEZs that qualify for tax incentives, and I think this is an issue that we proceed we're engaging on with the National Treasury. The other issue relates to the infrastructure funding. I think this is becoming a thorny issue because for the longest time, all the SEZs have been relying heavily on the DTIC funding until 2019, when we went to Cabinet to present one of the SEZs, and the Cabinet told us that this is not sustainable because we are continuously designating new SEZs. There will be a time when the DTIC just can't afford any SEZ. What is the DTI's plan? And that's when we then did this thorough review and came up with a new approach. And part of the outcomes of that new approach, or part of the plans, is that we are currently implementing the hybrid financial models, where we are, of course, one, involving all the spheres of government to come and invest. Hence, we have the city of Tshwane, the province contributing towards bulk. And I think Tshwane was the first one where the province and the municipalities had to contribute towards infrastructure. But what we have equally introduced is the involvement of private sector in the development. There has been private sector appetite, but we were not keen to introduce that initially. But we are now introducing that for the private sector to come and develop infrastructure. And that model has been tested elsewhere. If you look at the Dubai Trade Port is in the SEZ. When you land at Dubai Trade Airport, you are already in the SEZ. But bulk of the infrastructure that you see there is developed by private sector. DTIC spend less compared to even Richards Bay insofar as the top structures there. So that is the kind of model that we are allowing. It could be built, operate, and transfer, or we could just allow the private sector to rent the space and develop infrastructure, because ours is developmental mandate. The interest is to ensure that we industrialize, we create jobs. OR Tambo has got one investor equally that has developed that infrastructure, and I think they will be transferring. It's a build, operate, and transfer. They will be transferring the assets to the SEZ over, I think, 20 or 25 years. So that is the kind of the model that we're allowing. We're also inviting the state-owned financial institutions such as DPSA and the CIP to come and assist us and support us in building the infrastructure. We are would be meeting with the BRICS Bank very soon to discuss SEZ-specific issues, which is triggered by Dubatse SEZ plans, where we'll be inviting also the institutions such as BRICS Bank to invest in SEZ to help us unlock and develop in infrastructure. The other question, Chair, relates to the scheduling. Which one works best? I must say that maybe let me just start with the definition, the distinction between the two. 3C means that an entity would rely heavily on the fiscus, so it's unable to borrow. So it functions more like a department. It gets its money from the state revenue. It pays for its services. And I think in this case, a classical example would be GGDA. And then we have another one, which is 3D. 3D means that the entity would get resources elsewhere other than state revenue. It must be able to generate substantial revenue from other sources. The classical example would be ESCOM. Majority of the state-owned provincial entities will be 3D. Those that own industrial parks such as Northwest Development Corporation, Free State Development Corporation, Limpopo Economic Development Agency, MEGA in Mpumalanga, they're all 3Ds. So technically, they should be generating revenue elsewhere other than state revenue. That has its own unintended consequences, because now you have a situation where government doesn't subsidize those entities because they have to generate revenue. And as a result, they rely heavily on these industrial parks, and they are able to maintain those industrial parks because they use that revenue to pay the salaries. But that is the story for another day, Chair. But in terms of the SEZ program, then we have a legislation, the SEZ Act, that prescribes that the SEZ companies must be business enterprises. Business enterprise means a 3D. That was an unintended consequence, because now we have a situation where some companies, some SEZs are 3D, which means that they comply with the SEZ Act, but they are unable to comply with the PFMA because they still rely heavily on the state, and they can't not rely on the state because they are not yet sustainable. A classical example would be Saldanha Bay is a 3D, but Saldanha Bay only has few companies, so its revenue is unable to sustain the SEZ entity. And then we have SEZs that are still 3C, like OR Tambo. It complies basically with the PFMA, but it doesn't comply with the SEZ Act because it's not a 3D. But in terms of how it functions, it complies with the PFMA. So I'm saying it's an intended consequence of the legislation because it's something that the DTIC has initiated a process to amend legislation to ensure that that clause is not included in the legislation. Our view as the DTIC is that, and of course it's legislated, this listing, it's a prerogative of the entity shareholders as well as National Treasury, depending on what model works best for the SEZ or for that particular initiative. So the SEZ Act in this case, I think we shouldn't have mentioned that particular clause. And I think there's another question that Honorable Malemeja has mentioned about the relationship with municipalities. I must mention that, of course, in the context of the city of Tshwane, I've mentioned that we've been working quite closely. We're trying to do that in SEZ, and that the reason why we had to come up with that particular tripartite agreement is that we realized when we were doing the review that part of the challenges why SEZs were dysfunctional was mainly because of the relationship with the municipalities. SEZs happening in the particular district or particular local municipality, but not involving that municipality. The only time we involved in municipality is when we seek approval. At times it's through the issues of sabotage. At times could be the issue of priorities, not prioritizing us because they don't even understand the SEZ program. A classical example would have been in Richards Bay as an example. We're struggling for quite some time, including Saldanha Bay, with the issue of approval for the building plans, the township establishment. And when we engaged with the stakeholders, we realized that no, there was just communication breakdown, and we had to involve the municipalities and make sure that they also have a sense of ownership. At times, all that they want is just the recognition to ensure that they are able to contribute, but they can't contribute on something that they are not involved or not even recognized. So it helps them to even plan for the SEZ in terms of infrastructure funding, which is the case of OR Tambo, because when we engage with the Ekurhuleni municipality, all that I say is that just recognize us as part of the stakeholders and would be able to help you. And I think, as the CEO has mentioned, CEO of OR Tambo, that is work on progress. They're achieving that. So, Chair, I think that is the list of questions that I could just add insofar as responses. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the team. I think your responses have been quite comprehensive. We note the additional challenges that you have mentioned that are still being worked on. And I think we must see how we can take up your invitation to visit these SEZs and see how the new approach, new in inverted commas, because it was adopted in 2019, how the new approach has worked in the Tshwane Automotive SEZ. So thank you very much. We hope to see you in the future in person when we visit your SEZs. Thank you very much to the team. We will then break for 10 minutes at the as far as our agenda is concerned, and then we'll resume at 25 to 12. We will look at the rest of our agenda. Thank you very much, members. Thank you to the team from the SEZs and from DTIC. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Are we excused, Chair?
Yes, you are excused. Thank you very much. Go and continue with the good work you are doing.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Good morning, members. We will now go to our next agenda item, Committee Secretary. We will now consider the study tour report.
That's correct, Chair. If
Okay, just by way of introduction, the report was tabled to the committee on the 13th of June 2023 for consideration. However, the members requested in that meeting that we allow political parties to submit inputs. But to date, we have not received any, so I'll ask the committee to, I'll ask the secretary to go through the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As indicated, we did not receive any further inputs from members. So I don't know if we should just look at the concluding remarks, Chair, because that's where the most of the issues would be, Chair.
Yes, you may. Take the rest as read.
Yeah. Chair, these are the key observations that we drew from the visit. The first one is through the committee's meetings with various government officials and agencies. It became clear that the political environment in which the industrialization program was implemented was under President Tshwane dictatorial leadership. As a result, the manner in which the industrialization program was implemented may not work for countries that operate on democratic principles such as South Africa. The South Korean government adopted a multi-pronged approach to achieve its export-driven industrial policy. It took into consideration all factors necessary to enable industrializations, including infrastructure development, FDI, and business buy-in, as well as skills development. During President Tshwane's administration, the government prioritized industrialization and strengthening ties with the US and Japan as key elements for the economic development and sustained growth. Given its lack of natural resources and low industrial base, the development of the South Korean economy was dependent on the social compact between government and business. The South Korean government had made an intentional decision to identify and select industries that would serve as the catalyst for industrialization. It did so by focusing on these industries' capabilities rather than the nation's lack of mineral resources. South Korea had benefited from a trading environment that was more accommodating because of the less restrictive rules of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade prior to the establishment of the World Trade Organizations. Prior to 1995, the industrial and trade policies could be implemented with minimal opposition regarding trade regulations. Specifically, localization strategies could be applied to both private and public sectors. Subsequently, local procurement strategy can only be applied to the public sector in accordance with the WTO rules. In addition, the Japanese and US governments supported the South Korean economy. The Treaty of the Basic Relations between Japan and the Republic of Korea, which was signed in 1965 and restored diplomatic relations between South Korea and Japan, led to the transfer of skills and support of expatriates who invested in the industrialization program. The US granted unlimited access to its markets for its goods during this period. Workers' rights were severely curtailed during this time. At the start of the industrialization in 1917, there were no trade unions nor collective bargaining permitted. Therefore, during the period when there were no labor laws in place, the government was free to implement any policies it deemed necessary to acquire low-cost labor without providing any form of worker protection. However, this gave rise to labor movements that fought to secure greater protection for workers. The government provided support to business owners at the time to ensure their participation in the nation's industrial development and the support for the developer of new industrialists. In this regard, the government developed and implemented policies to ensure the strengthening of the domestic industry, to ensure that the support provided improved industry's competitiveness rather than protecting it. The government acknowledged that to promote economic growth, investment in infrastructure, machinery, human resources, and innovation would be necessary to meet its industrial goals. As a result, it made it easier to create products that were globally competitive. As a result of its investment in innovation, South Korea was able to develop new industries in which they could have a competitive advantage and in some cases become the world leader within those industries. Furthermore, investment in education and training was critical to ensure industrialization and sustainable economic growth. Therefore, government focused on all levels of education, namely primary, secondary, and tertiary. In particular, to create the skills and expertise required by the economy, it established relationship between vocational training institutions, universities, and government. It has promoted innovation and skills development within SEZs by linking or locating specific universities that specialize in the focus area of each SEZ. Furthermore, government has provided specific financial support for small and medium enterprises for research and development. The government recognized that it had to promote the value of vocational training to influence social perception at the time. Therefore, government provided the necessary incentives to encourage students to pursue vocational training in areas identified as critical for economic development. South Korea's array of free trade agreements with individual countries and economic blocs, including with China, along with its transportation and logistics hubs, place it in a favorable position to be a key trading gateway to Asia and the world. Good governance was essential to South Korea's economic development since it ensured businesses perform well, increase input, and unlock new opportunities. Additionally, it decreased risk, promote quicker growth, and increase reputational clout. This increased accountability and transparency was underpinned by greater coordination among all relevant departments and entities, as well as at national and local government led by the president at the time. The development of the Korean industrial policy had been people-centered. Therefore, social buy-in by all citizens and business was critical for the success of the implementation of the industrial policy. In spite of changes in the administration, the approach to South Korean industrial policy and focus on identified sectors remained constant, with adjustment to address changes in the landscape, such as technological advances. This has been essential to its sustained economic success. In its designation of SEZs, it was critical for the South Korean government to ensure that the necessary transportation infrastructure was in place. To facilitate the easy movement of manufactured goods, each SEZ is situated near a port, an airport, or both. Access to ports and airports is essential as South Korea's strategic goal is to serve as an international trading hub for exports to China and Japan. Coordination and support among the various levels of government were critical elements for the success of SEZs. Within SEZs, labor laws are flexible, namely there are no mandatory requirements for people with disabilities, regulations protecting temporary workers are relaxed, and unpaid public holidays for employees. Support for international investors located within SEZs include easing of tax and foreign exchange laws. Investors, for instance, are permitted to conduct transactions up to $100,000 without any obligation to report such transactions. Investors could be eligible for a tax rebate or receive a waiver for tariffs when importing capital goods for 5 years. South Korea's SEZs attract more domestic than foreign investors. This illustrates the flexibility and incentives provided by the SEZs that local businesses can take advantage of if they relocate to a SEZ. The South Korean SEZ establishes communities and facilities for the employees and owners of companies located within the SEZ to ensure that they do not have to travel far to work and amenities. South Korea does not focus on the number of SEZs it had established, but rather on the effectiveness in contributing to industrialization and economic growth. It attributes each SEZ's success on its location and quality of infrastructure. Where SEZs are not as successful, the government implements the necessary changes to support the efficient development. The government is also considering the expansion of successful SEZs and all the infrastructure. Foreign investors can identify an area where they intend to be located to be considered by the government for designation. Upon designation, this area would attract specific incentives as well. There appears to be a stronger public-private partnership approach in South Korea in terms of the development and operation of public infrastructure. Examples of these are the establishment of the electromagnetic wave testing for electric vehicles. In the case of the Busan port, there's a public-private partnership at the Busan port with the government owning the port and its infrastructure and private companies operating the port. This is facilitated through contracts between the Busan Port Authority and the private companies for the provision of service at the port. Those are the key issues raised that we captured, Chair, is for the committee to engage on it or propose any changes or to that, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, members. There is the first draft of the study visit to South Korea report. Can I take hands? What must we do going forward? Okay, there's the hand of Honourable McPherson. Honourable McPherson.
Thanks, Chair. So, I mean, I'm in full support of the report. And I think that it accurately captures what we did, what we found, and so on. I mean, the recommendations are tough because the reality is that, I mean, how do you put in a recommendation be more like South Korea? Because if we want to achieve the successes of South Korea, then we're actually going to have to, implement their policies. And whether or not the governing party is prepared to do that, I don't know. I can't speak on behalf of them. But I mean, that is essentially, whether we are prepared to make some of the tough choices that they do, cut out the corruption, whether that's going to be acceptable to other political parties. Again, I can't talk for them, and have the consequences for corrupt politicians. Again, are other political parties prepared to put that in? Because that's the only way that you're going to achieve that. So, I mean, those would be the recommendations, essentially.
Thank you, Honourable McPherson. Honourable Mbiani.
Thank you very much, Chair, for the opportunity. Let me also welcome the presentation, and it's a clear indication that what transpired in South Korea. Hence, there are these other issues that are very key that we must at least raise it in our government, as much as Honorable has commented about the other issues in government. We must commend the manner in which they have operated between government and business on issues of trade relations and so forth. And also this issue of trade prior to a general agreement on tariffs and also trade as a priority. One other issue is the issue of the skills transfer and as a program for the development that I think as the portfolio we can take forward as well is very key. And also the nation industrial development, it's in terms of the interactive and also investment in education and training, so that we're able to industrialize. It's very much important, this thing of engaging government and universities department so that they collaborate. We will therefore at least have that notion. But the other issues, yes, unpaid public holidays, I think, as you said earlier on the observation that some of the issues cannot be implemented in South Africa in terms of the labor laws that we have in South Africa. And also the issue of good governance is very much essential for us at least to do justice in this. In a nutshell, I wanted just to appreciate the report, Chair. And also we need to move forward as our colleague has. I don't know whether because now we are from this other meeting, that is possible, because some of the issues we have raised around the last item that we dealt with, the government owning ports and the ports operated by private entities like the SEZ around South Africa. I think this one is implementable. Thank you very much, Chair, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Committee Secretary. So, honourable members has raised issues around good governance and fighting corruption, investment in education and training, skills transfer. Is it possible to work those into recommendations?
Chairperson, anything is possible if the committee so decide, Chair. May I propose, Chair, that issues raised by Mr. Mbuyane and Mr. McPherson can be formulated into recommendations, just to make sure that we accurately capture that. Maybe we'll ask Mr. McPherson and Mr. Mbuyane just to put it on paper, and then we will work towards formulating a recommendation in line with within the scope of what we can do, Chair.
Okay.
That's all, and then we can present that to the committee next week, where we formally consider then the recommendations as articulated by Mr. McPherson, Mr. Mbuyane, and maybe we have consensus around that, Chair.
So far, so good, Lena.
Honourable Thring.
No, thank you, Chair. Chair, I just wanted to support that recommendation with regards to the matching of education with industrial growth. The other committee that I serve on, which is the Portfolio Committee of Public Works and Infrastructure, they've just come back from Singapore. And in Singapore, there's a similar incentive where government plans 5 years or so ahead, looking at what the economy basically is going to need, and then they begin to implement within the education system the necessary skills which they view the economy needing within the 5 or 10 years, whatever the case is. But I think we also saw something similar in South Korea and our South Korean visit, where clearly government mapped out a path of industrialization. You had that huge an agricultural economy in a sense, and huge illiteracy as well in South Korea. But because of their focus, educational focus, to match the needs of the economy, South Korea was able to turn the corner financially and economically. So I think it's a key point that has been raised and needs to be factored in. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we ask the members to submit their inputs, the 3 members who have spoken, and then we'll We'll work it into recommendations and we'll consider it next week. Thank you. That deals with this agenda item. So our next agenda item is the formal consideration of a motion of desirability on the company's amendment bill and on the company's second amendment bill. So in terms of Rule 286, 6A and B, in the process of inquiring into a bill, the committee must, where applicable, as far as possible, apply the following separate formal stages. A, informal discussion on the principles and subject of the bill, including 1, a briefing by the department concerned, and 2, consideration of public comments that have been received. And then B, adoption of a motion of desirability relating to whether the principles of the bill and the need for the bill are accepted. So in light of these rules, the above rules, I submit the following reports for the committee's consideration. Committee Secretary.
Chair, just a motion of desirability in terms of the company's amendment bill, that in the opinion of the committee, legislation is desirable to amend the Companies Act so as to insert certain definitions and amend the definition of securities, to clarify when notice of an amendment of a memorandum of incorporation takes effect, to provide for commission to publish, as prescribed, the notice of the location of a company's record, to differentiate when the right to gain access to company's records may be limited, to provide for the preparation, presentation, and voting on company's remuneration policies and directors' remuneration report, to provide for the filing of a copy of the annual financial statement, to empower the court to validate the irregular creation, allotment, or issues of shares, to clarify that shares which are not fully paid are to be transferred to a stakeholder and dealt with in terms of a stakeholder agreement, to exclude the subsidiary company from the requirements relating to financial assistance, to provide for instances where special resolution is required for the acquisition by a company of its shares, to provide for a social and ethics committee report and remuneration report to also be presented at an annual general meeting of a public company, to provide for the circumstances under which a private company will be regulated, will be a regulated company, to provide for the publication of the application for exemption from the requirement to appoint a social and ethics committee, to deal with the composition of the social and ethics committee, to provide for the preparation by social and ethics committee of a social and ethics committee report as prescribed, to be presented at the annual general meeting or shareholders meeting as the case may be, to provide in respect of a private company, personal liability company or non-profit company for the appointment of an auditor at the stakeholders meetings if such appointment is required, is a requirement in terms of the Act, to extend the definition of an employee share scheme to include situations where there are purchases of shares of a company, to provide for the determination by the Minister in consultation with the panel of financial thresholds for purposes of identifying the private companies to which Part B and C of Chapter 5 of the Act apply, to provide for the post-commencement finance for unpaid amounts that are due to the landlord during business rescue proceedings, to provide for the Commission to substitute the contested name of a company under certain circumstances, to provide for mediation, conciliation, and arbitration by the company's tribunal only in respect of their leave or complaints in terms of the Act, to further provide for the operation and governance of the company's tribunal, to provide for the pronouncement that may be issued by the Financial Reporting Standard Council, and to provide for matters connected therewith. That's the report before the committee for consideration, Chair. The motion.
Thank you. So we need a move and a second for adoption, Secretary.
That's correct, Chair.
Members, there's the report. Can we see a move and a second, Honourable McPherson?
Thanks, Chair. I just want to, if I can pose a question to the committee secretariat. It's been a long time since we've dealt with a bill from the executive to the committee. So I just want to refresh my memory. When we say consider submissions from the public, is that not something that relates to the public participation process? And once we've gone through that and we've heard from everyone, then the motion of desirability is considered. It just seems to me that the motion of desirability is very early on in this process and rather comes at the end. If you can just assist me or refresh my memory, because it has been a number of years since we've dealt with an executive bill. I would just like some clarity on that.
Okay.
Okay, if I may, just through you, Chair. The public comments that are referring to would have been any public comments that the department may have received during their process of consultation, if they made that available to the committee. And I think during the briefing by the minister, he reflected on those comments and how those submissions. What will happen now is that after the motion of what committee needs to decide is, based on what the minister is saying, is it still desirable to go forward with this legislation? And then after the committee said, yes, they're in agreement with that, if that's what they do, we will then publish and ask for comments, and then the process will unfold. But that's in relation to any comments that may have been received by the department or shared by the department during its process. That would be my understanding, Chair. Thanks. And we have, when we did, I went back to when we dealt with the other bills that was 2018, 2019, 2016, we followed the same process where we do the motion of desirability up front to indicate that the committee is of the view that it's desirable to amend the Principal Act in such a way. And that's reference to any things that the department may have shared with us in terms of submissions they may have received for the executive process.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Honorable Mbiyani.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, once more for the opportunity. I think, yes, the motion of desirability is being supported, more special that you can see in terms of the company remuneration policies and also the director's remuneration request. Directors are far away from the ones that are doing the job on the ground. So it's important. And also it's for the provision of the mediation and reconciliation arbitration by the committee. It's also very important and it's very much imperative for us to support such initiative. And also the issue of the department coming to us, I think for now, the process, if yes, we support as a committee the motion for desirability, then therefore we'll be able to change our program to, in fact, this bill as a priority, knowing that as members of parliament, our priority is still and is to make laws, and part of this it's our priority. I think it's also important as a committee to propose that we support the motion of disability and we give the secretariat so that they are able to infect the program of the bill moving forward, and also with the department coming to present officially to the department, to the committee. Thank you, Chairperson. I propose that we support the motion. Thanks.
We need a second, Chair.
Thank you. So any seconder to that proposal? Members, we need a seconder for that proposal. Members? I'm not sure if members are still in the meeting, though.
Members are still in the meeting.
I'm still here.
Honorable Monakedi, I didn't see your hand, but you may speak.
No. I'm fine. I'm just saying because I thought I'm disconnected, but let me not participate here now. Maybe later. Thanks.
No, that doesn't make sense, Honorable Monakedi. I'm asking for a seconder to Honorable Mbiani's proposal that we adopt the motion of desirability. Honorable Monakedi?
Chairperson, I'm sorry.
Are you seconding?
Yes, I'm seconding the proposal.
Please say so. Thank you very much.
I'm supporting the proposal. I was getting cut now and then.
Thank you very much. That concludes our agenda for today.
No, Chair. Sorry, apologies, Chair. There's another one. There's two bills. There's another motion.
Okay. Yeah, I forgot the second amendment bill. Thank you.
Yes, Chair. Just waiting for Mara to share. It's a short motion. Is that with respect to the company's second amendment bill, that in the opinion of the committee, legislation is desirable to amend the Companies Act so as to amend the time bars in respect of proceedings to recover any loss, damages, or costs which a person may be held liable in terms of Section 77 of the Companies Act, to amend the time bar for bringing up an application to declare a person delinquent in terms of Section 1622 and 3 of the Companies Act, and to provide for matters connected therewith. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, members. There we have the second motion on the company's second amendment bill. Can we have a mover for the adoption, Honorable Mbiani?
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Chairperson. I think on this motion, it's important because it's part of the implementation of the Zondo Commission's report. I proposed that we adopt the motion.
Thank you, Honorable Malamacha.
I second, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Duly adopted by the committee. Company Secretary, does that conclude our agenda?
Okay, that concludes the agenda for today, Chair.
Thank you very much. It was a long one. Can you just give us our meetings going forward for next week?
Chair, we are meeting with the Northwest Development Agency on the Babalegi and Mogwazi, Borodelo and Karakua Industrial Parks, Chair. We will consider the fourth quarter report on Tuesday, and also we'll formally consider the report of South Korea. Just to reiterate, members who indicated the recommendations to put it in writing, and we will formulate in accordance with the standard rules that guide such recommendations, Chair, for the study tour report. Thanks.
And Wednesday? Wednesday, Wednesday, Committee Secretary.
Chair, those will be part of the changes. Remember, yesterday we said there will be changes to the program, Chair. It will impact, and we haven't had a discussion with you yet on that yet,
Okay.
Chair.
Okay. No, that's fine. Thank you very much. Thank you. That concludes our meeting for today, honorable members. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Long live the chair.